How's the little one doing?
Doing good. Growing. He's officially growing his hair in,
Okay.
which is just crazy to me. Because I'm like, babies are usually bald. So I'm like, he's gonna have a full head of hair, which is a plus.
But he's got more than me already.
You know, it might be close. He has more than I did at 3 months. So I'm like, he gets it from his dad.
I remember my youngest when she was born, she had just the blackest black hair.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, because her mother's blonde and I was more blonde, and I'm like, where the heck did that come from?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just long and black, and all basically turned blonde.
Yeah, isn't that
It
crazy?
was just the weirdest thing. I'm like, she was my kid.
Yeah, no, right? Yeah, I've seen other stories like that too. And it's just like my nephew right now, he has super, super, super blonde hair. And when he was born, he didn't have too much hair, but when it started to grow in, it grew brown. And then it just turned to blonde. So it's, yeah, super interesting. Right now, his is growing in kind of like my color, where it's brown, but like a warmer tone to it. So we'll see if it changes or not.
Probably will. Your husband's hair color is.
His is brown, darker, but it's more of a cool tone. So it'll most likely be brown.
Most likely.
Yeah. The oddballs would be if it's blonde, because my mom is blonde, or black, because my dad and my mother-in-law both have black hair.
My brother, his one daughter has just the reddest red hair in the whole world. She doesn't know what her family has red hair. Supposedly two in-laws back, or grandparents back.
That's what I love about genetics, just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Because it's
Who
just,
knows, right?
right.
They deserve one.
Thank you.
I'm just hoping to get the good genetics out of that.
Pretty much. I'm just hoping for it. He doesn't have to be like brilliant or like crazy smart, but like just. Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal.
No, that's you always, who knows what's going to go, right?
I know. Yeah, I was kind of hoping he'd have hazel eyes, because my dad has hazel eyes, and then my mother-in-law has hazel eyes. But I think they're going to be brown. So we'll see. Which I mean, either way, I don't care. But it's just funny to see. Just yeah.
My second daughter's eyes, hers were kind of like dark.
Did they
When she
really?
was little, they were dark, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and now they're blue as mine.
And I have a coworker, her nephew, his eyes went from brown to green and ended up. And my nephew, his eyes were like sky blue. When they were born, they were gray, but then they turned sky blue, and now they're more of like a green blue.
Isn't it? I mean,
It's
it's
wild. So right now I'm seeing little hints of brown. So it could still be hazel, but we'll see. Yeah.
yeah, genetics is really weird.
Yeah. It's fascinating. That's why I'm usually asking people who their parents look like. Because you know, there's some families where all of their kids look like one parent. And like my family, my siblings, and we are a total mix of my parents. Like we don't look like one or the other. But we look like our
I love to give me the answer, Abby, but I don't know either.
Whereas my sister, her baby, he looks like a copy and paste of the dad. Yeah. So I thought, I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna make a video.
saying they can move it to
And I'm
whatever,
you know, like all that time and effort that I put into it, and then they'll just nothing like me. But he does look like me. So. And then he's a mix.
And you see, as he gets older, it'll change again.
Yep. Yeah, right now he has my eyes
First item. So let's actually try to plug you in really quick. HDMI. So it should just plug in. I'm not one. Yep.
You know, like, you know what I like?
want to go say hi?
Kevin.
As far as Jerry, I never seen him. Kevin Blake Roberts, Donovan. Thanks for coming tonight. I know I've seen it before. It's a PowerPoint.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
So
I just-
I might have forwarded him that PowerPoint.
It worked, Kevin, so, we've got a few just items of business.
Yep,
and
I
then
know.
We'll
I
call
got
you
saw
up.
the agenda, so I'll just
Okay,
sit
good.
down. What, should I shut this, or will somebody be up here,
You
or
can
am I
leave
the
it right
first
there,
speaker?
just like that.
All right, with it just being a minute after 6 here, we'll call the meeting to order, and Mark will take roll tonight.
Councilmember Miller,
Here.
Councilmember Valento,
Here.
Mayor Roberts,
Here?
Councilmember Erickson,
Here.
Councilmember Larson.
Here.
Great. And if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right, I am going to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda, just removing the discussion item number 9.
Well, second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. Right, awards and presentations. Number 5, we have Washington County Attorney Kevin Magnuson here to come speak to the council. Welcome.
So, let me get my presentation slide on here. This is. All right. Let me try this again. Here we go. Well, good afternoon and good evening, I guess. But thank you so much for having me. My name is Kevin Magnuson. I'm the county attorney in Washington County. And I don't really have an agenda. I have some slides that I use to just kind of talk a little bit about the office and give you a little overview of what's going on with us, maybe some of the crime trends and other trends that we're seeing, and then have some time to chat. So this is kind of your time. If there's anything that you want to talk about, feel free to stop me and tell me that that's really boring and you'd rather talk about your agenda. So I grew up in Lake Elmo. I'm living in the house that I grew up in, 1898. My father sold it to me as is. This stuff's still there. It's held together by spackle and wallpaper, essentially, and it's a major project. And I know my wife, who, when she's having a bad day and there's a real estate agent in the driveway, I know something's up, right? I have 2 kids, a 13-year-old and a 5-year-old. And yeah, we're going to school in Woodbury and Lake Elmo and really enjoying this community. I worked in Minneapolis for 20 years in complex business litigation. So this was a big change. And my predecessor, Pete Orpit, you know Pete? Because for those of you who don't, I really feel bad for you, because he's an amazing human being. I miss him every day. He talked me into joining the office to help him on some things, and then he talked me into running when he retired. And the office that Pete built was a great office. And I think, it's changed a lot, which is fascinating to me, or just amazing that, in 3 years, 3.5 years, so much changes. But it really does. But the core of the office and the mission and the approach to practicing law and serving the community is exactly the same. And I think we've embodied Pete's values as we move forward. There's now 61 and a half people, not a small person, but a half-time person in the office. And it's about half and half staff and attorneys. So we're at a point where we're not big that we need to rely on a lot of systems, like maybe some of the other bigger counties, bigger county attorney's office. But, you know, there's a lot of really interesting cases and you know, challenging cases. But we're still able to just have kind of a relationship-based collaboration, which I think is a big part of the office culture. It makes it a good place to work. Let's go grab some water. So about half of the lawyers and staff are in the criminal division. And, you know, I don't want to be glib or sound cliche, but when you talk about the core values that we have, the first and most fundamental value and priority that I have is public safety. And that may sound like that's obvious, but I don't think it necessarily is, because I want to do everything I can to rehabilitate someone, you know, to give them the opportunity to make sure that the right size hammer fits the right size nail, so we're not overcharging or over-punishing people. But at the same time, I don't feel that the community should have to bear the risk when someone is released and there's real danger. And, you know, and the idea is, well, we want to give, you know, the defendant the second chance. Well, the question I'm asking myself is, can we do that, and to what degree of risk are we putting onto the community? And I take that balance very seriously. And I just don't think it's fair for someone to go about their business to have to, you know, endure the possibilities of, you know, of violence or crime. So, you know, we strike a balance. You know, we want to do the right thing the right way all the time. And, you know, that involves looking at the situation closely, every single case, every defendant, every victim, and trying to ascertain to the best we can, you know, what is justice in this situation? And it's not always clubbing the person over the head, mounting their head on a pike outside the office. That's not what we do. You know, it's not about punishing people. It's about finding that point of justice and enforcing the laws that prescribe what we are supposed to do. Thank you so much. So we've had, as you can see, over the years, including over COVID, you know, the number of complaints that we've had has stayed pretty steady. So we're at about, we get about 1,500 referrals per year in law enforcement, and we charge about, you know, 75% of them, so about, you know, 3/4 or a little bit more, so about 1,200 charged cases. And the reason that they all aren't charged is that there are a number of cases that just don't pan out, and they have to be dismissed. You know, but the process that we have, you know, whether we like it or not, it's just the process, and I think it works pretty well, actually, is, you know, most of the time, in the 90%, these cases result in a plea agreement. And that typically is because someone with counsel typically realizes that they're kind of at the end of the road. And when you charge these things, you're thinking about, okay, what is the right result here? And that isn't always the maximum amount of years you could possibly get for a person. Sometimes it is a significant amount of incarceration, you know, but it doesn't have to be the maximum that's allowed to accomplish the goal. And so I don't think of a plea agreement as selling out or, you know, a fire sale or anything like that, not wanting to try the case. I mean, I can tell you my lawyers would rather try a case than plead it out, because, I mean, trials are fun for lawyers, believe it or not. Maybe not for you guys if you, you know, get called to testify in one, but you know, we like doing that. That's why we're prosecutors and not at some big law firm in Minneapolis like I was for 20 years, doing antitrust and securities fraud. So, but also I think the success that we've had, that's a pretty relatively high charging rate, is because of, in particular, the relationship that Dan Starry and I have. And that's similar, you know, I think that was kind of bequeathed to me because, you know, Sheriff Hutton and Pete Orpin had a close relationship, and then Sheriff Starry and Pete had a really close relationship, and Sheriff Starry and I have maintained that. And, you know, essentially, he's been essential to me getting my feet on the ground in this job. Now, I also work really well with some of the police chiefs, and I have to tell you, you've got one of the best around in Chief Peterson. You know, early on, we had some issues, you know, from our side of some things that were, you know, potential hurdles, and the way Forest Lake handled that was so professional and so ethical. It was just sort of the shining example of how things should be done. And so I commend you and Chief on just the way this department is run and the quality of the force that we see here. So I'll talk a little bit about crime trends, and I won't belabor this because, you know, there's a lot of data that we could get into, but I thought this is interesting because, you know, you'll see in the main COVID years in 2020 and 2021, there was a real spike in auto theft related. So that's receiving stolen property as well, you know, an automobile. We charged essentially the same punishment or the same type of crime as a theft case, but it's a stolen property case because you can't determine who actually stole it or not. There's multiple people in the car, but the end result ends up being the same. But, you know, when you're looking at, you know, 2018, there was a higher number, but that was a bit of an anomaly. You know, when you're at 55, and then you jump to 79, and then you jump to 93, and then you see it starting to come down. And, you know, 47, I think we're doing better. It's not good enough. You know, I mean, that's still a lot of car thefts, and as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, I'm proud to say that we're moving in the right direction. With criminal sexual conduct, that's another one that a lot of people are tracking. You know, it wasn't really a COVID-based bump there. You see, you know, 50 in 2021, 43, they're both higher than for the most part. But those cases tend to involve a lot of different considerations on whether they get charged or not. And, you know, the least of them is how good of evidence do you have? I mean, do you have a victim who can testify? I mean, it takes a lot of bravery to go through sometimes 2 years after the incident and have to relive it multiple times while you're preparing for trial and then, you know, going into it. So I really understand how difficult it is. And it's also difficult for us to prove a case when, you know, we don't have a victim. Like I said, auto theft was up, but for a while and then going down. But, you know, in addition to motor vehicle theft, we've got joyriding. And here you see you know, what it looks like when a car has been stolen as part of the Kia Challenge. And there's a space in the ignition where you can insert something about the equivalent of a USB drive, which completes the electric circuit, which allowed the car to be started. Those were in older model Kias and Hyundais. I think that there's been safety measures taken, and I don't think that's a problem. Of course, we have a Hyundai, and I'm always afraid that some kid doesn't know that. They're going to break a window and try to steal it. Hasn't happened yet, though. But so joyriding is really considered the unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and that's a crime. But, you know, we also will charge that as receiving stolen property, and it has the same penalties of theft. But I want to tell you that in Woodbury, they've been using the flock cameras, and I know that that's been somewhat controversial. I tell you, they work. They really work. You may recall there was a guy who stole a wallet out of a construction site, and the flock cameras detected him driving by in the Target Home Depot area in Woodbury, and they found the car parked in the Target parking lot, and then he came out, he had what everybody thought was a gun, and it really was a high-velocity pellet gun, and ended up getting in a shootout with officers and was shot several times and survived. But, you know, he testified later, or stated later in his sentencing hearing, that it was suicide by cop. So that gives you a flavor of not only how flock cameras work, but just how difficult life can be as a law enforcement officer. The issue with flock cameras, I'll just tell you that you know, there's a lot of private entities want to get a camera like that, a license plate reader, and then they want to hook it up to like a city law enforcement or county law enforcement. And you know, you start to get into problems with the data that you're required to keep as a part of, you know, the statutory requirements. That they have control of the data and you don't, but those laws then apply to your use of that data. So that's just something, it's not something you can't overcome, it's just something I caution you about. So this is the thing that to me is, one of the most unsettling, sad, difficult trends that we've seen. And you could see, again, during the COVID time, that the rise in fleeing in a motor vehicle from officers just skyrocketed. You can go from 35 in 2018 to 111 in 2022. We're down to 75, but that is just crazy too high. And I'll tell you that it's dangerous for everybody. And we've made a lot of progress as a community and in law enforcement, and then in the way we charge some of these things, to do everything we can to disincentivize people tearing through a neighborhood. If someone heads into a neighborhood, law enforcement they drop back and they just wait, sadly, for the smoke, because there's typically an accident someplace down the line. And they can find the guy. They're doing everything they can while being focused on recovering the vehicle, apprehending the suspect if they can, but not to the risk of the community. And I think Forest Lake's done a really good job of that. I think Washington County has been sensitive to that too and done a really good job. So I'm gonna run this. It's dangerous for officers. That's the bottom line. And it's dangerous for everybody, but the officers in particular, when they're that close to a vehicle, and it starts moving. We've had officers dragged. When someone shuts a door with their hand in, that kind of thing happens. It's just not acceptable. I think it is one of the most disturbing trends, and you wonder what's going on in society where there's that kind of skyrocket, and then it doesn't really settle down. It's not like the normal COVID bump. Something happened during that period that's with us today. And I think it has a lot to do with I think there's just the boiling temperature in our society, I think, is just a lot lower than it used to be. I hear about this, for example, young men and women who are incarcerated. They get in there and they'll start throwing down over things that nobody would have before, knowing that there's going to be a consequence and just not even getting to that thought in their head. And that, I think, we're seeing a lot of that being played out in other aspects of society, but the most troubling area, I think, is the tendency to flee. Let's see, hang on a second. We already did that. All right. So juvenile crime is another area that's just been stubborn. And it became a real problem during COVID because, and I'm not getting into the politics behind it, but when you close a school and there's no structure or supervision, no role models, or very little, through no fault, and sometimes, a single parent now stuck in the situation. So you got a kid with a $700 iPhone running around with nothing to do but then they're tapping into what's going on in LA, and they're looking at the crime trends, and you started to see a lot of this kind of copycat crime trends happening. And it's a stubborn problem. I think part of it comes with what we do after some of these kids have been apprehended. But the reason I'm talking about kids now is our sex trafficking task force has been really stellar. And the advantage of having it be a community, a local law enforcement and prosecutor project is, it is in fact here on the ground. The BCA does a great job. You affiliate with the BCA, you're going to be in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and maybe in Washington County, following up on something. But we have a pretty strong presence on the ground, which affects massage parlors. I know there's been a lot of work on ordinances and that sort of thing. And they pop up. You close one down, they pop up. They close one down, they pop up. And having that kind of presence is really important. But it's not just the Vice Squad. This is not about Vice. This is about victims. And the people who are victimized here, this is absolutely traumatizing. And it's a life that when you're in it, when you're addicted to drugs, when someone has got that kind of physical, mental, chemical power over you, it's just incredibly difficult to leave that life. And a lot of what we do are we do sting operations, but we do recovery operations. But I'll talk a little bit about those, but one of the things that I want to talk about, and the reason I was talking about juveniles, is we have added a very strong focus on runaway children. We have the investigatory ability, the technology, the expertise to find those kids faster than I think most other, law enforcement communities, and we've been using that, as much as we can to get involved early. And I think when officers know that we have that ability, they call and we can respond. So, there's a case in 2024 where there was a grandmother of a 14-year-old girl from Cottage Grove who reported her daughter missing. So the officers learned that she was communicating over you hear a lot about Snapchat. There's so many different messaging apps these kids. This was called Text Now. And they were able to get location information from that app by subpoenaing that information. And they determined she was likely at Boyd's Motel in Newport. So there, when they got there, the officers found the girl in the motel, dressed in lingerie, alone, having been assaulted for, several days, frankly. But they were able to intervene and work in that girl's life. But the first step was they were able to use the phone to lure the suspect back and make the arrest. And then you have his phone, her phone. That just opens everything, and then that's when you start getting evidence that is really helpful in looking at the broader trafficking situation. And the work that goes in through social services and charities and other groups to then try to meet that girl's needs to repair and try to help her then move forward with life, again, is daunting. So the sting operation, so I had to blur these because I was actually giving a presentation and someone came up and said it's my ex-husband in there, and it never occurred to me that actually might happen. She said she wasn't surprised that he was there, but still. But these are individuals that were charged and convicted in Washington County. It's mostly just to show that we're doing these things. And typically what you do is you have a sting with a mark who poses as a sex purveyor, and then you lure the John in and make the arrest. And part of it is that we always use someone who's underage, at least the dialogue, not the mark, but the dialogue, so they know that they're buying someone who's 15 or 16, that they're buying services from that person. And so not only are they involved in trafficking, they're involved in trafficking of a juvenile. And I think that's where a lot of our focus needs to be. Now these are several pictures, and this is the same woman, which I have to point out because it's that the effect is so stark. This is not from Washington County. This is actually from a national publication, and it is several years old. But it's the real deal, and I think there are many other of these kind of displays out there in the published works of the specialists. But this is an area when people ask me, what can I do to help? When you look at in the sex trafficking side of things, it is that next step then. And there's a new place that's opening in Oakdale. I think it's great. It's called Corey's House. It's a charity. They bought a really, really nice house in Oakdale. They were looking for it in Woodbury. They couldn't afford it, so they went to Oakdale. But it's a great house, and it's in the middle of Ward and June Cleaver neighborhood. It looks like any other upper middle class beautiful home, and that will be for juvenile victims of sex trafficking. And they're doing the final bits of licensing and things before they open. But we're going to need a lot more of that kind of stuff, because you can't take a person from this life and then send them to just a shelter and give them a burner phone and expect them to be able to put their life back together. You just really can't. It has to be pretty significant intervention. So I talked some about the juvenile prosecution and the challenge that we face. But what's interesting is, kids do some stupid things. kids and criminals have a lot in common, just in general. I'm finding out from my 5-year-old, you know, he's a little criminal half the time. But, you know, the executive functioning isn't always working great. And a lot of times kids, you know, they aren't a criminal, but they do something that happens to be a violation of laws. And that offense is something that has to be addressed. You can never just say, oh, well, Junior, that's, you know, better. I mean, even if it's just having an officer stop a person, recognizing that there is a law here that, that you know, we live in a nation of laws, and is then moving that kid along, that, you know, does a ton of good. So the vast majority of cases that we see are minor cases. So with all the, you know, the discussion and the concern about the spike in juvenile crime, I just want you to know that the vast, vast majority of what we see are cases that are minor, they go through diversion, they complete it, we never see them again. Now, I would say there are about 10 cases a year that are in that real serious category, and they take up a ton of time because they usually have a criminal history a mile long, and there's multiple cases going, and there's, you know, but even though we spend a lot of time doing it, and that gets a lot of news, that is not where our kids are in Washington County. So you can see here, again, in motor vehicles, I'm not going to belabor this, but again, it parallels the what you saw with the adult statistics, that there was a huge spike, and you know, it's dropping. So this is following a pursuit. The suspect has a gun in his right hand, so that is a car that he stole and crashed, and well, there's an officer in pursuit. And to be honest, I don't actually remember what law enforcement that was. So.
Yeah, it almost looks like Woodbury.
Very well be. So we've had, you know, designated juvenile prosecutors, particularly on the vehicle theft and carjacking, when it was at 33, partly because, you know, we needed to have a lot of attention there, but we also wanted to make sure we understood the, you know, the crime that was being committed, how that case played out, what the forces and reasons were behind it, and having a dedicated prosecutor allows you to get someone who can build that knowledge base, which really is important to figure out, well, what can we do as a community to try to address these things? I'm proud to say that you know, the carjacking crime actually didn't become a specific crime until 2023, and we have yet to charge a person under the 2023 carjacking statute. So, but I think that's a good sign. So civil division, you know, they always kind of go at the end, and they're kind of the junk drawer, and I get it. I mean, that's where everything is, and I was in the civil division when I first started, and so my heart's with the, you know, the civil division guys, but they do everything, absolutely everything, and a lot of things that we really care about in the community, they're protecting and serving and helping, you know, just address the general welfare of our community. In addition, you know, all the contracts that the county is into are reviewed by our office, and that is a very important role. You'd be surprised what you find in some of these contracts. Everybody seems to want liquidated damages, but you know, the other thing is that these lawyers and myself, we're advising the county leadership, all the department heads, individuals within the department, so that they're getting legal advice as they go forward. We provide that same role with law enforcement, and we're providing it with the managers and leaders in Washington County. On the law enforcement side, I will just point out that we, especially since I've been the county attorney, I know Pete did too, but I've really emphasized the need to have law enforcement training that is free of charge. That's our mission, is to go out and provide training for law enforcement. Now, there's a lot of training that they get through training that's at the law enforcement level, but we do as much as we can in-service training. So we'll come out and do the training on whatever topic anybody wants. But I also started a program. It's a 2-year program that's kind of like a junior college, where there's 2 years worth of courses. There's some core courses, there's some elective courses, and when you complete it, you can get a certificate. Now, I don't know, I mean, what people are doing with the certificate, but people are completing the course, and they are smiling when they get it. So I think it's been a service that's been great. I just want to end by saying that, I think the thing that distinguishes Washington County's, this office, the county attorney's office, but I think you also see it in law enforcement here. You see it in Chief Peterson and some of the other law enforcement leaders in the community. You're seeing it in the people that are doing providing the community services, the outreach. There's a tremendous amount of love and caring that just kind of imbues the whole process. There's a lot of people caring about other people, and you see that in this job every day. When Pete was trying to talk me into taking it, he said, look, the hardest thing you'll do. So my wife was trying to figure out why being widowed for 7 months with an infant was a good idea during the election process. And Pete said, look, this is one of the positions, the best positions if you want to do good in society. Being in the county attorney, staff, attorneys, law enforcement, public service in general, I think you can accomplish a tremendous amount of good. So happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks for that. Any questions, Council of Attorney Magnuson? I just want to say on behalf of the city, we appreciate the partnership that we have with our PD, and if there's anything that we can do more to support that relationship, we're more than willing to be involved in that. And just thank you for coming up this evening and taking the time to
Absolutely.
speak to us.
Seems like we're far away geographically, and I don't get up here as much as I would like. But I'd like to spend more time up here. And now that we've had this chance to meet, hopefully there'll be, just easy, good communication. Anytime anybody needs things, pick up the phone, call me, or call somebody in my office.
Yeah. And we do have the flock system that's going to be online here,
Yeah.
hopefully by the end of the year. So
Yeah, we're excited to see that come in.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, open forum. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak any city matter. If you would come, give your name and address and limit it to about 3 minutes. Anyone interested in speaking this evening?
Hi, I'm Jesse Wagner, 956 16th Avenue Southeast, Forest Lake, Minnesota, 55025. I just had to mention something on the speed bumps they were looking at putting in. As an owner of a low-profile vehicle, they're not very friendly. So I know I have about 4.5 inches of ground clearance. So if we could put in smaller speed bumps, would be nice. And then I also would like to thank everybody that's been stopping by at Arts in the Park. It's nice to see all of you there. Great event for the community, I think. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Jesse, appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak this evening?
I did have a Kia back in the day. It wasn't stolen, but I decided to sell it because I couldn't get it insured. It's horrible. So I have a new ride now. My name is Tara Steenblack, and I'm new to Forest Lake, and I just wanted to come and meet you all. I have an application for a massage therapy license that's up for discussion tonight. And I just wanted to spend a moment and say that I'm excited to be in this community. I've been a massage practitioner for over 20 years. I come from Cannon Falls, the Northfield area, and I've been licensed there since 2009. And I run a very respectable practice, and I have a lot of experience in many different areas that I'm excited to bring to this community that are different from some of the other practitioners that are here.
Great. Well, welcome to Forest Lake, and good luck in your new
Thank
adventure.
you so much.
All right. We have one other.
My name is Linda Madsen, and I live at 25 Lake Street North, Unit 306 in Forest Lake. You probably didn't know that speed bumps were going to be talked about twice this evening. So I am here, and first of all, I want to thank Dave Adams for the work that he's done in listening to our concerns and figuring this out, and to the council. We came to a work session and explained it and what we've been concerned about. So thank you for that. And Dave sent the map of where they would be, and probably if you took a vote of the association and the people that work and live there, they would maybe say like 8 to 12 would be good. But on the map, there's 2. And we are requesting that there be 4. There's the road that's in front of the building, Park Place building, and then there's the road that is between the parking lot and then the park into the lake, into the beach. And if there aren't speed bumps there, well, they're not gonna come by the road by the building. They're just gonna go over there like they currently do. And they tend to go faster there because, as you know, you can park, straight at the building. So people tend to go maybe a little bit slower there. And again, I'm talking about people that, you just start driving and you get going too fast. But then I'm also talking about people that come there to drive fast. And so we would just ask you to consider putting in 4 rather than 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak this evening? Right. That will, looking for approval of tonight's consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Did you want to remove the one item from the consent agenda before?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, A through O, and then the letter Q, pulling P off the consent agenda.
Second?
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have our consent agenda approved. So with that, then we will go to our first item, which would be, what number was that? Item P for a regular agenda item tonight. And Dave, I think you're going to start, or, no, now you are, I guess. Originally weren't, but if you want to tee it up, I know we have some individuals here from the committee that may want to speak as well.
Yep, so the memo kind of laid out the low bids and the project. Obviously, you pulled it off to have more discussion, so just looking for what you want from me or from the veterans group here, just answering your questions, more or less. So yeah, anything you have for us, we're more than willing to answer.
Yeah, I guess the first thing I just wanted to confirm, there's a pretty big swing in bids difference, and we took the low bid, which is pretty standard. Does this company have experience in this? Or are we confident that they're gonna, this is like downtown, we gotta make sure that we get it right. Is there any concern at all by either yourself or Ryan? I know you can't speak for him, but maybe in past conversation, do we feel confident that this is the right contractor?
So Pembroke Companies, they have worked in the city before. They did Safe Routes to School, I think the 18 and 19 project. So they did around South Shore, 3rd, through the southeast and southwest part of town. So they did a good job there. I don't have any reservations about this company. It's one we've worked with before. Bolton Manx worked before, so I don't. It's not a company that I don't know. We're not into a North Shore Trail project where we don't know the company, so it's a company we work for.
Okay, yeah, you knew exactly where I was going.
Yep.
Any other questions of council, from council? If not, maybe, I don't know if any of you would be interested in speaking a little bit, maybe an update where we're at with fundraising and the process for the general public.
Yes. One of the
Maybe
issues
you, just state your name and address. there.
Ron Miller, 7569 208 Street North, Forest Lake. And I happen to be the American Legion chaplain and the chairman of the Veterans Memorial Committee. So the one thing related to this is that agreement liability-wise, as to having the VFW or the American Legion, kind of being the backup plan to the Veterans Memorial Committee if anything happens in the future or whatever. Yesterday we had there was a picnic out at the vets camp, and so Bob Detmer and I, another member of the committee, we talked to the VFW commander and then another VFW person that was there that could speak to that. And they agreed with, first of all, one thing is that they've done all along, and the Legion has done also, and that is we've purchased the flags for down there. I shouldn't say flag plural because I don't know about the state flag, but for sure the U.S. flag and the Legion flag and the VFW flag, we've bought those. and they're fine with that, but then I also said that, you're, need to be concerned as far as the liability and this and that and the other. It's a Veterans Memorial thing on the city land and all that. So they are, they're happy to look at that and probably go along with it. I know for sure the Legion, me being on the executive board, we'll do that on the Legion side. So when the lawyers go ahead and figure out what that is, and you guys figure out what you think, send it our way and we'll see about it. So that was the first thing on my mind. Any points on that topic before we?
No, just to summarize, we're working with the veterans groups to make sure that there's some sort of agreement for ongoing maintenance, and so that we all understand who's in charge of what, if there's graffiti or some other, unfortunate need for maintenance, and then make sure that Public Works understands what their responsibilities are, veterans, their responsibility. So I think we're a long ways towards that. Kyle's been working good with those folks on that. So.
Yeah.
Yep, and that agreement's with Amanda right now. She's reviewing it. She just sent Kyle and I an email today saying that she has some questions. She wants to work through it. So we wanted to try to get the agreement done at the same time we approved this project, but it's just kind of lagging behind. But they have some commitment here and through legal in the city too. So it'd just be nice to know the dollars that come in from donations, and then who kind of does what long term. We want it to be a memorial for after all of us are gone to, just to look nice and stay nice. So we're just working through that, and that'll come back in probably next month or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and, Dave and then Kyle and, the engineers have been doing a, real good job overall. So the bids, we met last Thursday, and we knew the basic numbers, but hadn't seen the actual bid stuff today. One thing I want to point out on the bids is, like on page 130, number 28 and 29, it talks about small pavers, brick pavers, and large brick pavers. Those are for the structure and the walking surfaces, whatever. That's not the Veterans Memorial pavers. Like, that's the small size right there. The 4x8s, the large size that we sell is 4 times bigger because it's 8 inches by, 8 inches high and 16 wide, so you can really put 4 sign bigger. So that's on there. Other than that, the other thing is on your main sheet, that isn't it, the bid sheet. No, it's the one dated August 6th, Office of Engineering. The one thing not on there, which it's a positive thing, but it's not on there, and that is we got approval when we went last February or so. Mark Finneman and myself went to the state to get some more historical type funding, and it was approved by the legislature, and then it went over to the Historical Society, and those funds will be coming. State legislature approved $275,000. The Historical Society, they get to, massage it a little bit if they want to, so whether it's that much or a little bit less or whatever. And Kyle is right on top of working with that, Kyle Young and staff. So that's good. That's all good things. So the other thing that's, by the way, that's not in the bid-wise is I mentioned the pavers in there, the other ones, structure-wise, our, Veterans Memorial pavers are not in there. And there's 2 different areas of thought to buy them, okay? So one area of thought is to go ahead, and they're gonna be in the semicircle, and we take all the ones that we have now already, and we put those in the semicircle, and then all the other spaces, we fill them up with blanks. And then we go ahead and get it engravers to come when we sell them, each one particular as it goes. Well, that would end up being $17,000 right off the bat for the blank ones that we wouldn't otherwise pay for right now or next fall. And so the other piece of that is if we buy them all now, the ratio of small versus large is determined by the public at this point, okay? So the last 4 years, we had, it shows it here, this one here. Last 4 years, the small size, we sold 16, and the large size, we sold 32. So double on the large size. What we actually have as far as in the ground right now, the 380 some, the small is 197 and the large is 185. So if you take what's in the ground, yes, it's more small, but if you take what the trend is the opposite of that in the last 4 years. And right now, the ones that we sold with today, August 11th is one of the 2 deadlines during the year. And there's 2 smalls that were purchased and 15 large ones purchased. And I think that's gonna be more in the future. There's gonna be more large. So if we go ahead and buy all those blanks, you know, what are we gonna do? We're gonna stuff it as to, the public isn't gonna be able to decide, number one. Number two, if you have it's gonna look, well, on the positive side, against my position, would be, it would look prettier having all of the semicircle all filled up, you know, whether it's blank ones or not. But on the negative side of that is anybody just kind of breezing on through, they'd go, oh yeah, they got all the pavers, and somebody says, oh, can I buy another one? Well, no, they got it all filled up. Well, maybe didn't look at, oh, these are blanks and they're not, you know, they're not anybody's names. So another point is as far as, okay, if we don't get all the blanks right now, we would use a filler material to be in that area. You know, you would have all the ones that are purchased already there, and then whether it's sand or whether it's silica stuff or whatever. Now, one thing, and I didn't realize until Dave mentioned it tonight, is the silica that goes between them, because the pavers are obviously rectangles, and we're doing them in a semicircle, so there's gaps in there. There's going to be a silica that goes in there and in between the slots and all, and that he mentioned, I thought it was, you know, just stays, you know, pliable or whatever, but that hardens over time. So, which is actually good in a lot of respects, but these other ones, we wouldn't be able to, if we bought the blanks, we would put them there, and they would be locked in, and it would be locked in as to how many there were. If we just fill it with sand or whatever, then we just take the sand out as we buy some, or twice a year when we sell some more. We would just go ahead and keep filling just like we are now. We would fill it up and whoops, keep on going, and that's what I would prefer. I ran the numbers on the differences of that, and where did that number sheet go? Is it over there? My numbers. Come on here. The 17,000 is what the cost right now for the blanks, whereas if we do them later, it costs us 0 now. Here it is. It's hidden behind this. All right, so the buy the blanks now $17,870. Okay, and then engraving them in place, it's going to cost $75 a piece to do that, to engrave them in place for the small, $150 a piece for the larger ones. That all comes up to be $49,800 if we do their ratio of what the engineers recommended, 250 254 on the smalls and only 205 on the large, which is wrong numbers, but anyway, that's what they figured. That would end up being over the 17,000 now and the 49, 50,000 later, $67,670. If we do it like I would rather do, and that is pay them as they go, first of all, it costs us zero right now. Secondly, in the future, they only cost us $40, $40 all engraved, really great price. It's been that way the whole time for the small, and $75 for the large. And if you do their 254 of the smalls and 205 of the large, that comes up to be, in the future, it would be $25,500 that we'd spend, but we don't spend any now. And the savings between the two, the 25,000 versus what it costs us with the blanks and da-da-da-da over time, 67,000. So the difference in savings is $42,135 in savings. And public doesn't get to choose when we run out of smalls or run out of larges. And so anyway.
Are we needing to make a decision on this in the near term? Is this part of this bid, or?
Well, the issue is, they're going to do all the underground, they're going to do all the work right after Labor Day, okay? And at first, you know, if you go back 2 months ago, whatever, they're thinking, okay, we do all the underground work, the footings and whatever, September, October, whatever time frame, and then not until spring is when they would do the rest, you know, the above-ground pieces. Now their plan is to do it all at once, which makes sense for the contractor. The contractor who's got it all in, you know, and he's got his equipment there and whatever, and so it would be cheaper, that makes sense. Do it all at once. And that would include these pavers.
Okay.
But that's a separate, it's not in the bid and whatever, it's a separate thing, so you as council could certainly say, no, let's hold off on that. Let's not buy the blanks, let's wait and, you can wait and buy the blanks in May if we want to, or whatever, and have them all, and on Memorial Day if we want it all full. Why fill them up and put snow on them? But anyway, questions?
Does staff have a particular, maybe it was in the memo, or maybe this wasn't even addressed in the memo, I didn't look at that, but does staff have a preferred way to handle this?
The preferred way to handle is get them all installed right now. And you get polymetric sand in there, and they're all sealed in. We don't want an open with sand or pea gravel, because that's gonna end up all over the park and just get thrown everywhere. So we actually went over this with this group, and they okayed this to put them in here. It's just kind of a change. There may be a cost savings, but I've also told the group that we should just engrave these in place, get them in there, and instead of pulling them out and putting them back in where you get ripples on the, you know, you can't ever get it back in 100%. So you get them sealed in. You know, people can come up to a blank and say, you know, we can make a grid. Kyle will work on that. That says, I want this spot, or these 5 around here, they get reserved. A couple times a year they come engrave them in place, and they get picked out that way. It just, I love his cost savings. It's a great, it's him trying to save money, and I really appreciate that, but just for the structure and for to not have it get kind of wonky, it's just better to get them all in place and then, you know, engrave them on site. If we get to that point where all the 8x16s are filled and we have that inner ring, you can see that on one of the, they have a couple inner rings of the small ones. If they're not getting filled, that can be part of a project, right? Where you can pull them out and maybe add a whole bunch of bigger ones, but to individually pull them out or change that, I mean, unfortunately, this is what was approved, and this is went out to bid, and this is what the contractor is planning on installing. And that ratio was kind of agreed upon we did come up at one point saying, do you want as many smalls, you want bigger ones, and this is kind of where it was agreed at.
So
I don't want to go on a back and forth, but it's kind of one of those, I think this is, as the contract goes, to put these in place, to get them sealed in and not have these open spots and then pick and choose where ones go. It's gonna end up being a mess.
So this bid for the 562, that includes all the blanks?
Correct.
I guess,
I don't think so.
It does.
And does it say in there as far as installing all those?
It
They're all
does.
installed prices.
It's all installed.
Because there isn't anywhere in here as far as the buying those blanks, the 17,000. That's not in there.
It's part of the project. It's in the bid.
Not in,
so,
What happens is the city ends up buying the blocks, the pavers,
the
and then
blanks.
gives them to the contractor to install, instead of having the contractor buy them and then have a 10% markup and a little inside baseball, but that's the purchases, the city would buy them, just like the Sentinels and the medallions. The city purchases them and then provides them to the contractor to install.
That saves on sales tax as well.
Correct?
so not knowing all the details, just knowing what construction and that, I just think that having it in place and where it's gonna stay and remain there, I mean, we're talking, Dave's point, this thing is gonna be there much longer than we are all gonna be here. We're talking $600,000, and for $42,000 to somewhat compromise that structure, I just don't know if it's worth it, as much as I do appreciate the savings. Now, one thing and I don't know if there's room for this, I do agree with you, Ron, in that when you get to the size and the scope of this thing, people are probably gonna opt for that larger stone, just to be more visible. If there's some time to decide still what sizes they are, or the percentages, I would be open to that, but I just think to get this thing done right with the contractor and in place forever, quote unquote, I just think that's a better play.
And I agree. I think 5 years down the line, if all the big ones are getting sold up and you have that middle ring of all the small ones and it's half filled, then that could be a project in itself, right? That you remove a whole bunch of small ones and put a bunch of big ones back in. I don't think you should, you might get a big flurry of people that don't want to spend a lot of money on the big ones too, right? That just want to get their names on them. You want to have that, you want to have two price points where maybe the big one's too much, but they want to, buy 5 of the small ones. I think it's kind of weird now because this was kind of agreed upon and then now the change is happening. So I would really prefer we stuck with this. Otherwise, we're going to have to do a lot of change orders to this and change these plans. I think if we change in the future, that's fine, but I think it'd be wise just to kind of stick with this layout because that might just cause some issues with the contractor going forward too.
Any other thoughts?
Mr. Miller, I believe that's a sample there. Is that the small sample?
That's the small size, yeah. And if you're 8 feet away, pretty hard to read and see it very clearly versus the large size is 3 times bigger.
Heavy, thank you.
Yeah, they're all of them are the same thickness. It's just the the face size, whatever, and the font. The font is larger on the larger ones, and if we don't do any change at all, and we go ahead and install them as the engineers want to do, whereas some of us on the committee didn't want it to do it that way. Anyway, the point is we should at least do the percentages should be switched. I mean, there should be, of the ones that we're going to buy, the ones that they were going to buy, they figured it was going to be 205 large and 254 small. That's got to be reversed for sure, if not even, like say 300 on the large, and or anyway, somehow massage so that it's a, so that it looks pretty. Because right now it looks pretty with all the different, whatever. It needs to look pretty, that's true. But there's going to be a happy medium in there where we've got a little bit more percentage of larges in there, which just makes sense.
So, I prefer everyone to be on the same page on this thing, and so I don't know, are we coming to a deadline where we need to get this approved so that, because this work's gonna start here in a couple of weeks, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
You need time for the contractor to be able to get contracts in place, insurance, there's a lot of, it's a 2-week process, even from the day we award to the day we sign a contract. So if you delay this to the next meeting, we're gonna push the start date, which pushes us further into the fall, which makes it harder to rely on the weather and get this done the right way.
Yeah, I concur. I don't think it should, I think it should be, make a decision as far as the bid and whatever and accepting it, but that little minor part of the percentage of those are not in this bid anyway. So we can hash that out.
Mr. Mayor, what I would suggest is that we, if the council feels that putting them in place, you know, with blanks was the priority, and then, you know, keeping the project moving is a priority, that I would ask you to award the project tonight as the engineers have recommended it, and then tomorrow we can start asking the contractor if they'd like to entertain a change order. Change order should really not be considered prior to bid award. It's not good bidding practice to do that. Other contractors that bid the project may have said, well, I would have had a better deal on this or that. So it's not good practice to consider change orders ahead of the project. You're either awarding the project as it is, or you're not.
But those paver sizes are not in the contract. They're not in this bid here.
But
Show me where these
schematics-
veterans pavers.
The schematics are here that we're working off of, and that's all we can make a decision off of. And so I would make a motion that we approve the contract as presented by the engineers to Pember Companies, Inc., as presented in the packet tonight, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. We have a motion, is there a second?
I would second that. Keep it moving.
And just, you know, as far as discussion, let's get that all figured out, what's in and what's not. I think, you know, as Administrator Stott said, that, you know, we can maybe talk about a change order on size and all that. But let's get this thing moving forward and get this in for the veterans. And so with that, we have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Yes,
Good night.
thank you all, too.
Yep.
Thank you. Dave, Kyle's done a great job, too.
All right, our second regular agenda item, speed bumps in the municipal parking lot. Dave?
Yeah, we were here a couple months ago at a workshop talking about speed bumps at Lakeside. Kind of gave you a memo of how we, Ryan and I worked this through. Kind of came up with a suggestion of doing temporary speed bumps to kind of get a feel for if they're in the right placement, and we came up with 2 locations. We had Linda, the resident tonight, came up with a request for additional. Ryan and I had looked at that other stretch, and it's kind of a interesting stretch because no matter where you put them, you're kind of in where somebody's either backing into a spot or pulling out of a spot or right at an entrance into the park. Ryan didn't suggest putting any there. We can look into that, but really our recommendation for right now is putting these 2 in and seeing how they go. The plan would be to try to get them in September, run them to the fall until snow season, remove them, put them back in next spring, and then have them in for the summertime into fall, and then bring it back to council in the fall and see if we have any input or feedback of where these locations are, if we should change the spots, if we should go to permanent, if we should add some, all that kind of stuff for conversation. But looking for discussion, direction, comments, anything you guys would discuss about this.
Yeah, I mean, well,
Go ahead.
I mean, where you have them, I like, I mean, because you have them anchored with an island, and so people can't easily drive around them. You know, looking at other stretch, because there is so much parking, perpendicular parking, that if they were there not anchored by an island, or even if they are, they could easily just drive around them. Now, that said, you know, I'd be curious to see how these first two go, and, you know, if we think we should go permanent, you know, maybe look at installing them, or let's see what the trends are actually with the traffic patterns. You know, because I can certainly see where that would be the next runway or speed strip.
Yep.
But it's a little more challenging because you've got plenty of real estate to go around them, especially after hours. So I like where they're at. I think it makes sense.
Any other-
Just to bring up to the other gentleman's comment, so there's speed bumps and there's speed humps. So speed bumps are 3 inches tall, speed humps are 2 inches tall. So your humps are more of that softer up and down. They don't slow traffic down as much. They're designed more to get to 10 to 15 miles an hour, where your speed bumps, they're trying to gear towards you getting to 5 to 10, so you don't shake your teeth out of your head. So that's kind of, if that speed limit in here is still at 20 and you want to really slow them down, I would recommend the bumps themselves. Those are the 3 inches. We can also go with the 2 inch too, that it's a more of a, you know, a softer incline and back down. It's probably not going to slow cars down as much. They're probably going to hit them a little bit faster, but I also get his point with the lower vehicles, but still a 3 inch, if his clearance is 4.5, that would clear that as well.
So I think to get a true test of how these work kind of globally throughout the parking lot, it seems that putting at least one or another one along that other stretch would give us a better true test of how effective they are. I get where you're pulling off, potentially pulling out onto one if you're backing out of those spots there. Because it's not as ideal as Councilmember Erickson talked about, tying it to a median. I don't know if there's an opportunity by the crosswalk on the north side there to do something on either side. It looks like there might be a little bit of median to the south of that. And maybe right where that I don't know if you put one where the main entrance to the park is, if that does obstruct people from walking or it's a trip hazard. I don't know the ADA compliance stuff, but I like the location there. I would prefer to see one or two on the other one to get a real true test of it, but that's my thoughts.
Just for your reference on this map too, those 2 landscaping spots up on the north end are gonna be gone. The north one just got paved in today with the new parking spot, and that south one will be ripped out and put in with the new parking spot after Arts in the Park on Wednesday. So those will be not a curb anymore with landscaping, though they're 2 parking spots now. So that curbing or that landing shrinks down.
Okay.
I tend to agree with Mayor Roberts in that I would like to see just at least one additional one on that eastern side there. And I think, yeah, if we could put it either, I don't know. It's unfortunate that there's not a spot where we could put it next to one of those medians, but I think closer to that crosswalk on the northern part would probably be most ideal, if we're worried about people backing up in the parking spots, but yeah, I would like to see an additional one.
I think you're just gonna have people drive around them, honestly.
But I think if it's close to that, like, there's the median there on both sides, then they'd have to drive up on the curb.
Yeah.
I totally understand if it's south, they would definitely drive around it. That's why I'd be more inclined to see it in the northern part by that crosswalk.
Just south of the crosswalk, you're saying?
Yeah, yep.
So I guess is the, wherever it's at, or is the goal to, ideally, like to slow people down all the time, but more importantly, slow people when it is busy and there are usually cars parked there, so it's, obviously you want both, but controlling speed when there's a lot more traffic there is more important than it being in the middle of the night when there are no cars, so. But
If I could weigh in as your substitute engineer for tonight, I do think the idea of them of people driving around them, you know, maybe just defeats the purpose, but I think also there's a safety issue there where you're driving around into what should be parking spots, people who might be, that first space or two might be vacant, but then you might have someone either coming perpendicular to you in the parking aisle that you don't see, and that they're not expecting someone to be coming out of what would be a parking spot, right? I think just like in a big Target parking lot or a Walmart or something, you don't drive across you're not supposed to, drive across the vacant areas. You're supposed to stay in the aisles, right? And I think encouraging people to get into those vacant spots could be problematic. So I think if you're gonna do one on that eastern runway, we'll call it, I think the spot Ms. Valento and someone else suggested there south of that crosswalk, as long as it's not too close to that crosswalk, I think would be the other spot that I would support. I mean, I think, looks like there's probably an opportunity there to get one in without having too many issues with people backing over it.
Okay. Any other thoughts? And we're kind of, it seems like we're splitting hairs here a little bit, so I'm fine with either way. I'm glad that we have this with a test and see how it goes, but if we want a real test of how they're gonna work, if they are, I think having an additional one just seems to make sense. So I guess with that, I will make a motion, and we're looking for a motion or just direction? Motion, are we not?
Yep.
Motion, yeah.
A motion that we install 3 speed bumps, admissible parking lot, 2 that are indicated already on the west side of the lot, and then the additional one just south, on the east side of the lot, just south, or wherever we're able to do so, just south of that crosswalk on the north end of the lot.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we've strict 9 discussion items, so we'll go to staff updates, and Abby.
Just a couple quick updates. Planning Commission meets on Wednesday night this week. It's a light agenda, so we have scheduled some training. Land use training, know your role, kind of an hour long, that's presented by the league, so it's a pre-recorded webinar. Our second meeting of the month will be canceled, even though it feels light on the Planning Commission right now. We do have a ton of development stuff that is coming down and getting ready for entitlements, as well as a lot of earth kind of being moved out in the field. So there's still quite a bit happening, despite Planning Commission not quite meeting right now as much. Also, I have updated the council a few different times. City staff is working through quite a number of code enforcement complaints. Turns out when the public finds out you have a code enforcement officer, you get a little uptick in complaints, quite a number of complex cases that are taking a lot more staff time than I think we anticipated, and quite a number of non-nuisance-based complaints. So as a reminder, we created our nuisance ordinances and our administrative citations system, but a lot of the complaints that we're getting aren't necessarily always public nuisances. It's us sleuthing through our code and just finding code violations. So Dan's really been doing a great job, and I'm hoping at an upcoming meeting in September, at least as just an FYI in your packet, we'll kind of do a 3-month review now that he's here. Not of him, but of how the program's working with part-time, quarter-time staff. So.
Abby, as long as you mention that, talk about like his hours now, maybe potential for more, and I don't know if council, if it's a discussion thing that we want additional next year as we're contemplating the budget, more of his time.
Yeah, so as a reminder to the council, you allowed me to convert some part-time seasonal code enforcement, right? So we would hire an intern, and it worked. But by the time we kind of teed somebody up, they were really gone. And our code enforcement season is really snow off to snow down, right? That's our peak season, not that there isn't enforcement happening year round. Dan's hours are 13 and a half hours a week. He's usually here 2 to 3 days. It's not enough time. And I did make the request initially when I made the request to administration for the budget. I put that request as at least 20 hours. In the budget, 20 hours is currently what is proposed in the 2026 budget. There is enough work for Dan to work full-time. There could even be some augmented summer seasonal support. I have talked with him. He's favorable to increasing hours even up to full-time. I think that there are a number of what I would say backburnered complex enforcement cases that involve not only multiple departments, but also multiple agencies that we have not had the resources to dedicate to. These are, and you've seen some of them come before you. Without having dedicated code enforcement staff and just some of the other resources that our existing staff had, we weren't able to handle some of those cases. And now we're trying to handle them, but frankly, we're not doing them the most efficiently, effectively. And a lot of them are fits and starts, right? So some of those hazardous building actions, we take action, we have to wait 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. We have to wait until a court order, many different things. And just the tracking that alone can just be, it's his own challenge. Thankfully, legal counsel has been really helpful and supportive in that. But I definitely think that there's an opportunity for increased code enforcement, even on a proactive level. That's nothing to say or on a reactive level. That's nothing to say about even proactive code enforcement efforts.
So with that, council, do you want to see maybe some increased hours or revisit this or put a placeholder for more hours? Or are we comfortable with just 20? Or I know this is maybe not the right time to have this conversation, but we've got a little time here, and it's just to help tee up for staff what that might look like if we're open to that, at least, the conversation.
I think it'd be a good idea to keep that in the thought, especially since he's willing to do that. I think it'd be good to be progressive.
So potentially north of 20 hours.
Correct.
Yeah, I think, the move to go to 20 hours is really the big move, because that institutes benefits. They're prorated in some regard, but your move from 13 to 20 is a bigger jump than the move from 20 to, it's about the same maybe as 20 to 40, just because of the benefits that are added, so.
Even just a 20 to 32, right? Like it's not a huge savings to go from 20 to 40 to 20 to 32. But Mark is right. Your big jump would be your 13 to 20, because right now our 13.5-hour employees aren't benefited employees. So we do have that kind of 30% of the salary cost for those benefits at 20 hours a week.
That's something that we'd be open to.
Yeah, I'd be open to that.
I'd be open.
Yeah, I think it's great that we at least have this, and we're starting to get through these, and let's continue. So I'd be real open to having that conversation.
That's great. Thank you. I'll continue to work with Mark and finance on that proposal in the budget.
Great. Anything else from
I don't,
Okay.
unless you have any questions for me.
Dave? Anything?
Yeah, Dan's doing a great job, even pinch Public Works on a code violation, so he's
Perfect.
doing great. No other updates.
Mark?
Mr. Mayor, just wanted to welcome our two new officers and our, as I understand it, our first human resources professional on the staff. So thank you for approving those hires tonight. Staff is getting very excited about having some additional help here. Just a quick note, I think our finance director, when we approved her position and the offer, the anticipated start date was mid-August. It's been pushed back just 2 weeks so she can honor some commitments she has at her previous employer and not leave them high and dry on a very important issue. So we want to thank everybody for working with us on that, and come mid-September, we're going to have 3 additional professionals in our office, and we're very excited for that. So.
Great. Councilmember Miller?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Councilmember Villano?
No updates from me tonight.
Councilmember Erickson?
No updates tonight.
Councilmember Larson?
Nothing from me, thank you.
I don't have anything either, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
It's funny what I